Welcome everybody, thanks for joining us here at Howler Bike Park for the 2024 EMTB Shootout presented by Fox Racing and Schwalbe Tires. Today we're going to be talking about the Ari Timp Peak. Last year, this bike was in our shootout under the name Fezzari Timp Peak and won an award as the best bang for the buck EMTB. And we're excited with the new badging and colorway to see how this bike stacks up with a little different spec this year. Rob, why don't you talk a little bit about this 50.7 pound Enduro EMTB?
Yeah, $7,999, and for that you're getting a pretty impressive spec, I would say. A full RockShox ultimate suspension package, a Zeb and a super deluxe shock, SRAM Maven silver brakes, big new powerful stoppers with a mineral oil, and then a SRAM EXO T-type transmission drivetrain on there. And the rest of the finishing kit, pretty nice as well. DT Swiss HX 1700 wheel set, which is a really high quality one. So overall, for the money, I think definitely doing a great job there.
And of course, helping get you up the hill is the Shimano EP801 drive unit with 600 watts of peak power and a 635 watt-hour Darfon battery. So Geo on the size large, I'd say is pretty, I don't want to say middle of the road in a bad way, but I think it's a really nice blend and versatile. Of course, we'll have all the numbers published in a nice informative chart if you want to head to theloamwolf.com and check it out. And we'll talk about some of those key numbers and what they mean for performance out on the trail. So let's hit the dirt and see how this thing performs. I wanted to get on this bike towards the end of the week of testing just because I've kind of already spent a lot of time on the Fezzari Timp Peak and a few rides on this back home, and I kind of just instantly, within the second run down, all I could think was like, man, this bike is good. You know, like you kind of knew it was good, but then you start riding other bikes that are really good and some that are pretty good, and then right back on this felt comfortable. It's playful, it's light. Being able to like be down in kind of a sloppy, greasy, you know, catch rut, but seeing that I wanted to transfer up high and being able to compress and lift the bike up onto the side hill where there was a little bit more grip. This bike got off the ground. I mean, it's one of the lighter full power bikes, and it's a really nice blend of playfulness and planted riding.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think, you know, as one of the bikes that we would all be grabbing regularly and taking out for a hot lap, and, you know, we always knew we were going to drop in and have a solid time on it.
We're going to get a little bit critical on some of the things because we like this bike so much. We're going to really be focusing on the nitpicky stuff because there's not really any major glaring things going on, but like there are nuances that as you ride the bike more and harder and bounce between all the different bikes like we're doing, you can start to pick up on a few things. So for me, one of the things that I notice, and I don't know if it's like an anti-rise thing or the power of the Maven brakes or what it is, but there are a couple of certain corners repeatedly where I would be coming in and I'd be noticing how fast I'm going, how confident and capable I am on this bike, and the rear end would sort of want to lift and rise up, almost like travel is extending, and it's making the transition from a certain type of corner to another corner feel like the bike's a little taller, wanting to stand up rather than sitting and squatting down in through the turn. Is that something you ever felt?
It's not something that I felt necessarily.
Okay.
But yeah, there were a couple of times maybe I got a little bit out of shape in the corners on this thing, potentially, or particularly in the times where I maybe wasn't quite so familiar with the trail. I think once you learn your braking zones and stuff and you're not riding so reactively, but you're planning stuff ahead, I think you can overcome those effects a little bit, or at least I was able to. But yeah, so certainly the braking character is something that has its pros and cons, right? When you're on the brakes, the rear end's still able to move very freely, I think, and it helps to keep things really comfortable and settled, given that otherwise this isn't necessarily the most ground-hugging and trailer racing machine. It is more of a lively one.
For sure.
I think when you're on the brakes, that doesn't really change too much.
Okay, yeah, definitely a bike that is riding very high in the travel. I would almost call it like a hyperactive suspension. That combined with the lightweight, I think, what was this, 51
Definitely
pounds?
in that region, the light end of the scale for a very barely capable big hitting rig.
For sure. I think both of those factors combined make this bike one that is, I don't always want to say skittish in a negative way, because like you are able to kind of hammer and plow through stuff, but more like just fluttery and light and lively. And then I guess moving into another area, which I also talked a little bit about last year, was the frame stiffness. It's definitely a stiff frame, and I can feel the stiffness out of the rear end, but I can also especially feel it up in the front. So there were some areas, maybe top to bottom runs or like scrambling for traction on side hills, where I did want for a tiny bit more compliance out of the frame. But aside from that, overall confidence, overall fun factor, value, the way in which I could ride this bike and the way it made me feel when I was riding it are insanely high again.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out that you're a 180-pound rider who definitely prefers stuff on the more comfortable end of the spectrum, right? As a 220-pound rider myself who likes things quite supportive and direct feeling, I quite enjoy the stiffness that Ari's delivered with this. So, there's going to be pros and cons to it all for everyone. Potentially this isn't the rig that I would choose to plow down 10-minute long, super rough and gnarly runs where I'm going to be looking for every bit of comfort I can get out of the trail. But for the slightly shorter, slightly more, attacking the trail sort of runs, I do like how direct this bike feels.
How about if you're going to be going out, jumping, playing around, your normal riding style?
Yeah, this is, as the longer travel bikes go, this is as good as it gets for a playful, free-ridey, bike park, whatever you want to ride on it bike. But it'll still handle the chunk pretty well. I do think one thing that we'd like to maybe touch on is there's a few finish details on the frame that could be worked on.
Yep.
Certainly, again, we've got the down tube cover that just doesn't sit quite as nicely on the frame as we'd like to see it. The integration with the press button in the head tube instead of having it on the remote on the bar, I think is, it'd be preferable to have it all contained into one unit like the newer Shimano controller. But otherwise, Timp Peak is certainly a high quality overall rig, and certainly for $7,999 for this build spec, the Mavens, the Super Deluxe and Zeb Ultimate suspension, it's pretty damn nice.
Yeah, I think one other thing that is not unique to the Ari, it's something that we will talk about a little bit more in depth in our grand finale, is rear end mud, dirt, debris protection. There is a kind of a little gap here between the rear end of the frame and where the chainstays come in behind that link, and it is on all of these bikes an area for dirt and gunk and little bits of rock to get caught in there. And it's kind of painful when you get these brand new nice bikes and stuff's in there and it's just grinding between two moving parts. And it would just be nice to see a little bit better job from all bike companies to offer some protection, whether that's some kind of a mud guard or fender or something in there. And I think e-bikes as a whole could do better in that department. But yeah, that'll be something to see as e-bikes evolve, as they have incredibly in the last several years, which is really exciting to see. EP801 is a major improvement, I would say. I think this bike's quite quiet. How about you? Yeah. I think Ari has one of the best battery mounting systems. The way that their rail attachment inside that down tube, I think it keeps the battery much more secure, stiff, and quiet than a lot of the other bikes.
Still, of course, being removable, which for some people will be a deal unbreaker, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but all in all, I think a really solid bike, and for sure one of the most fun and playful long travel full power e-bikes I think we've ridden once again.
Yeah, it does everything well for sure, and it's definitely one that we always enjoy hopping onto.
Okay, Well, thank you all very much for watching another episode from the 24 EMTB Shootout. Thanks again to Fox Racing and Schwalbe Tires for helping us make this happen. Don't forget to stay tuned as we work through all the 14 bikes in this series and get to our grand finale where we see where the Ari Timp Peak stacks up against the competitors. If you guys had any comments, suggestions, or questions you want to ask, please leave that down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We would love to see you back, and we'll see you out on the trails.